Do you ever notice what happens when you ask theists for evidence of their God? They don't have any. They only have arguments. Well, to be fair, they also have feels and vibes. But arguments are the thing that make their deity seem like really super intellectual and whatnot. Today, we're back looking at our old friend Peter Kreeft and his argument from change. Let's go. Hi, my name is Scarlett. I'm an atheist and skeptic, and yes, we're back looking at arguments for God. And Peter Kreeft makes a good object of discussion because he has 20 on this website that some webmaster has kindly put up for us. And just as a reminder, Peter Kreeft is an actual philosopher. He studied philosophy. He has taught philosophy at places like Boston College and the King's College. So this is a real and true philosopher, and he actually writes pretty well. Like I said, today we're going to be looking at the argument from change. At the heart of this argument, what I see is that we notice that everything is always changing in the universe. And there must be something unchanging that caused all the changes in the universe. And spoiler, not really, that thing that is unchanging is God. That's sort of at the heart of it. But let's see how we get there. One interesting thing I note about Kreeft's argument is that he did not include some kind of syllogism or step walk us through premises. He just talks about this, which is, interesting, right? I'm not sure why that is. A lot of these do have syllogisms or steps along the way, but not the argument from change. I guess we're changing it up. Well, that's the blibbity blab on this video. Let's go look at the argument from change. So we start out. The material world we know is a world of change. No problem there. This woman came to be 5'2", but she was not always that height. The great oak tree before us grew from the tiniest acorn. I find it interesting, this young woman, like we're looking at a woman, there's no woman here, and I'm not 5'2", by the way, I'm actually taller than that, so I'm not the young woman in question, and I'm, I guess, disputably not young anymore. I guess that's, an opinion. We can think that we're young in our hearts. But anyway, so yes, the world is changing and we didn't start out the way we are now. Okay, fine. Okay, back into the argument. Now, when something comes to be in a certain state, such as mature size, that state cannot bring itself into being. For until it comes to be, it does not exist. And if it does not yet exist, it cannot cause anything. I find this language, that the state cannot bring itself into being, to be interesting and tricky because, of course, the state cannot bring itself into being because the state is not an agent. It is sort of the result of the way the complex organism operates, the blueprint that is in its genetics, and then other variables about nutrition and environment that act upon the organism. But the organism is a complex system with lots of moving parts and lots of things happening. The state is not bringing itself into being. The organism is in constant shift and change. Even this mature size is not necessarily the end of things because that young woman, when she gets older, she might lose height because of changes in her spine, for example. The same with the oak tree. It's always growing. It's always changing. It can lose limbs. The diameter is always increasing. A bunch of things. The state is the result of other things happening. So I find that this obsession with states and beings acting upon themselves, it's interesting and it's tricky, and I think it omits what science says about how our complex systems operate. I guess my whole point here is we have to be careful with the language we use and what this is pointing to, what it is indicating. So let's go on because, we've got more of the argument to read. So we go on. As for the thing that changes, although it can be what it will become, it is not yet what it will become. It actually exists right now in this state, an acorn. It will actually exist in that state, large oak tree. But it is not actually in that state now. It only has the potentiality for that state. Yeah, great. We're always looking at a snapshot in time. Whatever moment of existence, we're capturing just a little snapshot on its growth and what changes it has and everything. But fine, we can just say it has potentiality. It may not grow. We might smash it. That acorn might not grow into a large oak tree. A lot of things can happen along the way. Let's see where we go. Now a question. To explain the change, can we consider the changing thing alone, or must other things also be involved? Obviously, other things must be involved. Nothing can give itself what it does not have, and the changing thing cannot have now already what it will come to have then. The result of change cannot actually exist before the change. The changing thing begins with only the potential to change, but it needs to be acted on by other things outside if that potential is to be made actual. Otherwise, it cannot change. So we begin with this question of considering the changing thing, like the acorn in this case, or must other things be involved? And we come to the conclusion, obviously, other things must be involved. And I don't have a problem with this because the acorn exists in a system, which is the Earth, and all of the stuff that exists on our planet. Like the acorn will need to be in some soil, it will need to have water, it needs a bunch of things to make the change, to enact the potentiality that is in it. The potentiality is both from within and without, and I think that's the same with human bodies. We have both things going on inside the body and things that are acting on our body, and then things that we ingest and waste products that need to leave. All of that kind of stuff, because we are living organisms and we are in constant change. And so we get to this line that I think is going to be key for this whole argument. The changing thing begins with only the potential to change, but it needs to be acted on by other things if that potential is to be made actual. And of course, we're talking about things that are on this earth. We're talking about acorns, we're talking about human beings, we're talking about living organisms that we know of on this earth. And we know that they exist in the system that is this earth. And our bodies are complex systems with living cells that are constantly reproducing and then dying off. And for me, these changes are both inside and outside. It's not just that something acts on the acorn and it changes. The thing inside the acorn is interacting with the things outside the acorn. Change comes from both parts of the process. It's not just something acting on things outside. It's not like there's an agent saying, acorn, become a tree. The acorn slowly changes into a tree, both because of things inside and outside of the whole system. It's because we're on this earth. But let's see where we go on from here and how we get from an acorn needs things acting on it to the universe. Nothing changes itself. Apparently self-moving things like animal bodies are moved by desire or will, something other than mere molecules. And when the animal or human dies, the molecules remain, but the body no longer moves because the desire or will is no longer present to move it. I always find this use of the phrase mere molecules to be amusing. It's really clear that there are a lot of people uncomfortable with the notion that we might just be conscious molecules moving around. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's actually amazing that molecules can have the consciousness that we have and do the kinds of things that we have. It doesn't bother me, but a lot of people who believe in a deity seem to be really concerned about the mere molecules part. And by the way, there are a lot of molecules that move around, like air molecules, and they don't have any will or desire. They just do their thing. So I don't know about the self-moving part of this whole equation. But it's also interesting to me, this first phrase, nothing changes itself. The change just happens. Like, do we need an agent making it happen? When there are living organisms, they have a blueprint, which is sort of their genetics that makes stuff happen. Like, I'm not in control of my heartbeat or the blood pumping through my body or my blood pressure, and I'm not in charge of my digestion. And most of the time, I'm not really controlling my breath. I mean, I can have some control over it, but most of the time, my body just does that. So I guess my point here is we are actually moved by things that are beyond our desire or will. Our bodies are doing things beyond what we want them to do or what we can control. And there are a lot of things about our bodies that we can't control, like if we get sick and we only have minimal control over our aging process. And of course, one of these days, the body will just stop doing its thing. And that won't have anything to do with desire or will. That's just something that's going to happen. Let's see what our next point is. Now a further question. Are the other things outside the changing thing also changing? Are its movers also moving? If so, all of them stand in need right now of being acted on by other things, or else they cannot change. No matter how many things there are in the series, each one needs something outside itself to actualize its potentiality for change. I would think it's obvious that pretty much everything in the world is always changing. Some things change slowly, some things change quickly, some things we won't experience over the course of our lifetimes. They change so slowly, and other things change all the time. Things are always acting on each other, and it's both from within and without. Sometimes it's just following scientific laws, like when a cloud forms in the sky, that's just following the laws that govern the way the atmosphere works. Or if lava turns into stone, that's just the way things happen. That's just the way things go. It's not like they have a choice or something has to make those things happen. And when you get to biochemistry, there's a little bit of the same thing, that there are certain processes, that's just the only way those processes can go. So it seems like everything's always acting on everything else. There's interactions in our universe as a whole, and the change happens because of certain scientific laws, and also what the potentiality of that organism is, and then also what the circumstances are. So let's keep going. Let's see where we go after these questions. The universe is the sum total of all these moving things, however many there are. The whole universe is in the process of change, but we have already seen that change in any being requires an outside force to actualize it. I don't know that we've seen that, really. At least I think that it's more complicated than just something causes the thing to change. Anyway, our conclusion here is, therefore, there is some force outside, in addition to the universe, some real being transcendent to the universe. This is one of the things meant by God. So let's look at this last couple of sentences. There is some force outside the universe. So it's a force, but then we go to it's a being transcendent to the universe. I don't know how we got from a force to a being, and I'm assuming by being we mean some consciousness or an agent, something that can act on the universe, and I don't know how we got from a force to a being. And of course, this is one of the things meant by God. I totally agree. I think a lot of people just call this force God, but we haven't shown that it is an agent. We haven't shown, therefore, that the Bible is true or any of the holy writings of any religion. All we've said is some force needs to cause the universe to change. But I'm not even sure we've shown that the universe needs that, really. Let's see the final paragraph. Briefly, if there is nothing outside the material universe, then there is nothing that can cause the universe to change. But it does change. Therefore, there must be something in addition to the material universe. But the universe is the sum total of all matter, space, and time. These three things depend on each other. Therefore, this being outside the universe is outside matter, space, and time. It is not a changing thing. It is the unchanging source of change, and source is capitalized for some reason. We know the reason. The source has to be capitalized because we're calling that God. This is where the argument ends, that we need a being outside the universe that is outside matter, space, and time, whatever that means. I don't know what it means to be outside of matter, space, and time. I don't know what we could consider outside of that. And it is the non-changing thing that causes change. It is the source of change. Therefore, things change, but they need something to cause them to change. And at its heart, this is just a God of the gaps, argument from incredulity, argument from ignorance. We don't know stuff, and we're going to stick our God in there. Briefly, to me, we don't know that the universe needs something to cause it to change. Maybe whatever it is that caused our universe, the expansion event that we call the Big Bang, whatever that was, came from within. It did not need to be acted upon because it's made up of more than one thing. And just to be clear, we just don't know how our universe got started. We're not at a place in science where we can say anything with any kind of certainty. This is why the universe began. So we don't know that universes, for example, need something to cause them to be, especially not something that is outside of space-time and matter, wherever that is. Again, who knows where that is? Some non-space, non-time area outside of all things that is unchanging itself but causes things to change for some unknown reason. Since we don't know about the beginnings of our universe, we really can't say much about what could have been before, if that makes sense, or what is beyond, if that makes sense, because I've heard that potentially those questions don't make any sense because time and space exist in our universe. We don't know if there's a multiverse. We especially don't know if there's some deity that wants to be worshipped that lives beyond whatever our universe is, whatever that space would be. One thing I think, though, in all of this is I think it's a big leap to go from beings on this earth that rely on things of this earth for things like nutrition, whether you're an oak tree or a being, to enact a potentiality that is there in the blueprint of your genetics. to the universe has that same thing. The universe is itself a complex system that potentially all the stuff that's already in it, the matter and energy or the potentiality of that, is all that's needed for the universe to do its thing. And then once those things are set in motion by what already is present in it, then because of the way the universe works, stuff changes, stuff moves, stuff starts interacting. But let's assume that it's true. We need something, some outside force acting on the universe to make it begin. How did you conclude that that is some agent? What if there is a multiverse? What if there's something out there, some other space beyond our space, some other time beyond our time, and it caused our universe to come into being? How did you determine that that's some spaceless, timeless agent? And especially, how did you come to the conclusion then that it cares about who you have sex with and whether you tithe to a church or all the other things that people seem to think deities need us to do? If it is just something that got our universe going, why does it care about the minutia of our life? But finally, what I have to say is word games. Just putting a narrative around why I think there needs to be a deity really doesn't do much for me in terms of making it more believable, making it more acceptable. Ultimately, I think that this whole argument is in the realm of science, and somebody would need to do some measurements or some predictions about if there is an agent beyond our universe, what would you expect to see? And unfortunately, nobody has done any of that. So all of this is just a little story. Stuff changes, and we need some unchanging being to make it so. I guess the change just simply can't go back forever, right? No eternal regress. Well, that's what I have for you this week. What struck you about the argument from change? Put it in the comments below. You know, I love to read your comments. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuffing. Thank you so much for the YouTube stuffing. Algorithmo and his consort Algorithmo will reward you with changed YouTube recommendations. They will be good, they'll be mediocre, and there'll be some that are just bad because YouTube. It occurred to me that I hadn't done a comments video in a while, and that's where I usually thank everybody for buying me a coffee, and I decided to change it up and thank you all here. Thank you so much to these people for buying me a coffee, and special thanks to my Crimson members. You know, I love you all, and I really appreciate how much you support this channel. And if you are so changed to want to buy me a coffee, here is a QR code with my little kitties who say, please buy us some kibble. They are always in the mood for some kibble. And I don't know what is up next on this channel, but you know, it's probably going to be stupid. Bye for now.